Welcome to Ohio FFA Career Connection. Throughout this series, we will explore just a few of the vast career opportunities in Ohio agriculture. Whether you want to work on a farm or in an office, laboratory, field, or classroom, FFA prepares us to be successful. Together, we'll get to know various professionals and learn how we can jumpstart our future careers while still in FFA. Let's get started. I'm excited to visit with Matt Ortman and learn more about his career with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. So thanks for being with me here today, Matt.
You're very welcome.
So let's start with some of your background. How did you start to work in agriculture in the Ohio Department of Natural Resources?
Well, it was kind of a long road. I received my Bachelor of Science in Dairy Science from the Ohio State University. So it was a long way to natural resources. I started out upon graduation from OSU as a dairy supply, sales, and service technician, servicing dairy farmers within the state of Ohio and parts of West Virginia. It was route sales type work, some service and installation work. So I worked in the dairy industry for about 5 years. And from there, I went to the Muskingum Soil Water Conservation District. From there, I started in this position in 2001.
How's your career evolved over time since you've been there in 2001? Like, where did it start and how is it in 2022?
When I started in 2001, my position at that time was to coordinate our volunteer instructors. At that time, we had about 1,800 volunteers who taught the hunter education course and trapper education course in Ohio. The hunter and trapper education courses are mandatory for all first-time licensed buyers. So it is a state mandated project. So what I did was certainly to provide training to our instructors, evaluate curriculums, update curriculum, and also it is a federally funded project. So there is a lot of record keeping as far as we can take credit for the hours that our volunteers contribute. So there's a lot of record keeping, budgeting, all that type of thing.
Well, how did FFA help prepare you for your career now? What skills did you learn or life lessons from FFA that you use today still?
Well, I think the leadership, I was the treasurer of the chapter. Certainly, those leadership skills are invaluable to anyone. I did compete in public speaking at the Creed contest my very first year. I have to say that was not one that I enjoyed at the time. I did not enjoy speaking in front of people, but over time I've had to get rid of that and learn to do it and to be comfortable doing it. So, there are tons of skills to be learned. Certainly when I was in school, the construction, the small engines, the welding, all of those skills, though I would not consider myself an expert, are invaluable.
What were some of your CDs that you competed in high school?
Dairy cattle judging obviously was the big one. I competed in general livestock a couple different times. I actually competed in the forestry contest once out of a last minute substitution, which was a lot of fun. I didn't really, I hadn't studied, I guess, but they needed a body. And in those days, most of the spring CDEs were all on the same day, so it was pretty difficult to compete in more than one team. But I love the CDE process.
Well, we'd also like to learn a lot more about your current job as an educator. So, what are your primary responsibilities that you have?
The hunter education program is federally funded as part of the excise tax on firearms and ammunition and archery equipment. And as a part of that, we must justify, for lack of a better word, our expenditures of money and time. So making sure those records and the time that our instructors spend is accurate and that they are certifiable, I guess is a good way to put it. And so that's a lot of my daily job. Certainly tons of inquiries from the general public, whether they took the hunter education course as a freshman in high school and they cannot find their certification card and they need it. You're helping to look at those historic records or provide, options for those folks. So that's a lot of public interaction over the phone, emails, and then also, as I mentioned, our instructors and helping them get their classes scheduled, their materials ordered. Um, it varies so much as far as which direction it goes for a certain day. This time of year, scheduling courses, finding historic records is a big part of my day.
Awesome. So if it varies all the time, what's the rest of the today look like for you after you're done with this interview?
Well, I've got some to make some confirmations. We put out a request for proposals for a new hunter education curriculum. We have since received all that information, and it is going back through our state purchasing process. And certainly, I need to follow up and see if we are ready to purchase any items we need, such as the manuals and teacher materials, whether it's PowerPoints, videos, those types of things. So certainly, that's probably going to take up part of my day today. We also must do performance reports on our federal aid projects every year. And those things are coming up usually at the end of the month. So need to spend a little bit of time at looking at those performance reports. Did we meet the goals that we set out? Did we budget enough money, enough time, all those types of things.
So Matt, what are some priorities of ODNR right now?
Well, we talked a little bit about our funding, which is a federal excise tax that is paid by sportsmen and women when they purchase firearms, ammunition, fishing equipment, archery equipment. And with that, certainly it has been no secret that the number of hunters, to some degree fishermen, has decreased. And that concerns us in when the majority of our funding comes from there and not general tax dollars from the state of Ohio. That funding is used, whether it's to purchase public lands, to protect wetlands, to do research to help populations of bald eagle or reintroduce river otter or wild turkey. That funding is important to do those tasks. Certainly the monarch butterfly, there is some concern, and that funding from those sportsmen and women help fund those projects, whether it's for the monarch butterfly or the bald eagle, not just our game species like deer and wild turkey. So we're spending a lot of time trying to get new folks into hunting, fishing, trapping, because that funding is important for wildlife and conservation.
What are some of the practices that you guys actively do to help promote the bald eagles and like the re-release of the monarch butterflies and all that? What do those look like?
Well, our wildlife management section works there mostly, but whether it's protecting wetlands, bald eagles are predominantly not necessarily an aquatic bird, but the majority of their habitat is around where there are fish and those types of things. So it's protecting that habitat so that they can thrive, and it's the same with the monarch butterfly. I'm sure that if you drive up and down our roads, you've probably seen the plantings for butterflies, and all of those things are funded by the sportsmen and women.
So I know you got your degree from The Ohio State University in dairy science, but what other education and training did you need for specifically your job now?
Well, is a part of our job, and it's certainly not an everyday thing. We introduce new folks to hunting, shooting, um, trapping. So in the past, we have done archery training, the National Archery in the Schools program. We have received National Rifle Association instructor training for shotgun rifle and handgun. So those trainings are important to what we do as we are introducing new folks to those activities.
What is your favorite thing about your job? What makes you not have to go to work, but you get to go to work every day?
Well, I think a lot of it is just the diversity. Whether today, I'm doing office work and tomorrow or the next day, I could be out on the shooting range helping new folks get started. Um, with I think now we have about 800 volunteer instructors. And as you can imagine, they're from a diverse background and interest. So they can be extremely fun to talk to. And, they brighten my day at times. Just the phone calls and that type of thing.
What is one misconception that people might have about your role?
We are bound by certain rules and regulations. And I think it's hard sometimes for the public, even some of our volunteers, to understand that we still have to operate within certain parameters. That, at the end of the day, we may not like something, but those are the rules that we have to follow, and we need to make sure we're doing that.
What are some skills that Matt Wortman has that makes him the best hunter educator in the world? What makes you special at your job?
Well, I think you have to be open-minded. You have to be able to deal with maybe folks that are unhappy. I guess, what do we call them? Difficult customers, maybe. And I'm pretty good at being able to listen to what they have to say, give them a chance to voice, whatever concern or complaint even that they may have, and hopefully once that conversation's over, I've either been able to help them, which they didn't expect, maybe, or if I can't help them understand why they're in the situation they're in or what that next step would be. And it's really important to be able to do that.
What are some other careers that are similar to yours that students should consider or be aware of if they have an interest in working for any natural resource company or specifically the Ohio Department of Natural Resources?
Well, we have education positions throughout the department. Within the Division of Wildlife, we have a shooting sports coordinator who just coordinates shooting education projects. We have angling and aquatic education. So, education programs are a big part of what we do. There are education positions in the Division of Forestry and Division of Parks and Watercraft. So, it just depends on what you're interested in. If that forestry CDE is what really got you excited, or camp canopy or the forestry camp, if that's what really got you excited, then maybe an education position in forestry would be for you. I grew up hunting. My dad trapped a lot when we were younger, so I leaned over to the Division of Wildlife. But there are tons of positions. And honestly, every position in our agency has some education component, whether it's a wildlife officer or a wildlife management professional who is is educating hunters or landowners about wildlife. So that is such a big part of what we do.
Could you speak a little bit about the wide variety of jobs that ODNR offers?
Yeah. We talked about education. There are tons of education jobs, whether it's in boating education or forestry education, law enforcement, wildlife officers, parks and watercraft officers. So, if you have that interest in that criminal justice area, you can be a wildlife officer or parks and watercraft officer and spend the majority of your time out in the field or on the water. We have engineers that design boat ramps or parking lots or docks, all those types of things. There are engineers doing that. They're working in the oil and gas industry, mineral resources. There is just something for everyone in the natural resources department. Um, it can be hard at times to think of all of them. Counting, it touches so many different careers. And if there's something I didn't mention, if you dig deep enough, I am certain we can find a career that suits your interests. And there is such a wide variety of things that we get to do.
Well, what is one of your most favorite parts or fun parts about your job?
One of probably the most fun part of my job, and I certainly don't get to do it as often as I would like, is we have done, weekend courses for folks that want to learn how to shoot, how to hunt, how to fish, and it is so much fun to work with those folks who have no idea of what the shooting sports are about or what hunting's about, and it's a good reminder for me that sometimes we take a lot for granted, and I grew up and just thought everybody hunted and that everyone shot, and that's really not the world we live in. And it is a lot of fun to see those folks get excited about breaking a clay bird, shotgun shooting or catching a fish, all those things. It's really fun to see that out of new folks.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the connection between natural resources and production agriculture? Why does each industry care about the other one?
Well, I think, as I mentioned earlier, with production ag, there certainly have been wildlife conflicts for years and years. So, when I was in that position, I felt extremely qualified maybe to participate or to help make that connection. I spent my life in production ag, and wildlife will always be there, whether it's coyotes or deer or any of those things. And I think it's important that we understand each other and why we can't just eradicate all the coyotes or all the deer, and as a natural resources professional to understand that, we're talking about a person or family's livelihood, and that, certainly they can't, absorb losses of any great degree. So, you kind of have to have a real understanding of how those things work together. And, production ag farmers, they provide, I think it's like 95% of the available hunting land. In states out west, the biggest part of the states are federally owned or state owned. So there's lots of public hunting, fishing, trapping, all those type of things. We do not have that in Ohio. We actually were 47th, 48th on the list. So, you have to have that relationship if hunting is to continue and all those types of things. So they're tightly connected, I guess.
What are some challenges that the natural resource industry is facing right now?
One of the biggest challenges we have is, we have been an agency that has been funded on hunting, fishing, sports, men and women. And a lot of the new students graduating may have never gone fishing, hunting, trapping. And it's important that those folks entering this type of a career to have an understanding of what those constituent groups are, and and where they get their beliefs and what's important to them. If you've never been hunting, it may be extremely difficult to understand, why a hunter or a fisherman feels that way. So that's been a challenge. There's been lots of efforts nationally with college natural resource and wildlife programs to provide ways to educate students that may not have that hunting and fishing background in those traditions, those sports, so that they understand the constituents they will be dealing with.
Well, our main goal with this video series is to help connect students to career preparation. So what advice would you give to a student or FFA member that's interested in working in a career similar to yours?
Well, with my career or any other, I encourage all students to participate in public speaking, parliamentary procedure, all of those things that get you up in front of people and has you learning to talk with folks. As I mentioned, I hated it as a high school student. I really did, and even up through probably when I started this position, that was not part of my job that I enjoyed. It was a necessary evil. But the simple fact of the matter is, any of that communication, speaking practice you can get will pay dividends in the end.
What can the students do right now while they're still in high school to prepare for a career like yours?
Forestry, that CDE is great. My son participated in wildlife management CDE as well as nature interpretation. That is a great way to get an introduction to the natural resources field. If you're more interested in that science part of things, wildlife management, fish management, those CDEs are a great way to get an introduction.
Does ODNR offer internships or job shadowing opportunities for students?
We do. We offer internships. As a matter of fact, we typically hire 2 to 3 interns to assist us at the Ohio State Fair. We do internships within our agency as well. We do have one in our education section currently. Wildlife areas, shooting ranges, there's lots of opportunities there. They, are not, we're not a huge agency, but there are plenty of opportunities to intern or volunteer is always a good one within our agency.
What skills have you seen those interns or those people who are job shadowing that have served them best in their roles and to prepare them for the future?
Well, number one, not being afraid to jump in and get started. Again, I think we talked earlier, that being on time, ready to work, communicating with the public. And every position we have, there is that communication with the public piece, and just make sure you're aware and you're ready to handle those types of things.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for visiting with me, and I'm really excited for Ohio FFA members to learn more about your career and ODNR in general. So thank you.
You're very welcome, and I hope that it's helpful for them. And certainly, if they have questions about our agency or the Department of Natural Resources, call our toll-free numbers, 1-800-WILDLIFE, and they will put them in touch with someone that can answer their questions as well.
FFA develops our potential and helps us discover our talent through hands-on experiences, which gives us the tools to achieve real-world success. If you're interested in a career path similar to the one highlighted in this video, there are a couple of ways you can get started. One option to dive in and learn more is through a supervised agricultural experience. While completing an SAE, you will cultivate valuable employability skills while gaining work experience as a volunteer, a paid employee, or maybe even as your own boss. To learn more, visit saeforall.org or talk with your ag teacher. In addition, through career development events, you can put your knowledge to the test. Ohio FFA offers more than 40 CDEs. Here are a few CDEs that can help you further explore this career path. Ask your FFA advisor for more information on how to get involved. As FFA members, it's important for us to start making these connections and find future possibilities that align with our interests. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Ohio FFA Career Connection, which is made possible by Ohio Corn and Wheat. Thanks for tuning in.